Voice of America.
This is Walter Cronkite reporting.
He guided a nation through triumph and tragedy.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Tonight, the legendary anchor.
And that's the way it is.
In his own words. Critical condition, President Obama's uphill fight to save his health care plan. Hidden danger, NBC News investigates a safety hazard at public pools. And from the deep, the incredible invasion off the California coast.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. Substituting tonight, Savannah Guthrie.
And good evening. The tributes and fond memories are pouring in for Walter Cronkite. And tonight, the legendary newsman is the news. His death last night here in New York at the age of 92 was on the front page of nearly every American newspaper this morning. For a time in our history, it seemed at each milestone moment, the loss of a president, a journey to space, a painful war, Cronkite was there, guiding Americans with a trusted voice and becoming something of a national institution in the process. We began our coverage tonight with NBC's Ron Allen.
Good evening from the CBS News Control Center in New York. This is Walter Cronkite reporting.
There has never been a stronger, more reassuring presence in television news than Walter Cronkite, especially when the news was what we did not want to hear.
Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
Today, tributes to a journalist America came to know as Uncle Walter.
For decades, Walter Cronkite was the most trusted voice in America. His rich baritone reached millions of living rooms every night. And in an industry of icons, Walter set the standard by which all others have been judged.
When I got to know him personally in the early 90s, I found him to be just a man filled with energy and life. He was so kind to Bill and me, took us out sailing off of Martha's Vineyard, offered advice, both solicited and unsolicited, that we tried to follow.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Katie Couric. Good evening. It is my sad duty to tell you that our friend and colleague, Walter Cronkite, has died.
Katie Couric delivered the news from what since Cronkite's days has been called the chair. The title anchor first described his role at political conventions. Cronkite delivered the news for 20 years to some 22 million viewers a night. He always ended the same way.
And that's the way it is.
He reflected the way so many of us felt. He was family. He was someone who made us feel safe and secure.
He was a quintessential American. He came from the heartland. He wasn't flashy one way or the other, and his reporting was straightforward.
Walter Leland Cronkite was born in St. Joseph, Missouri in 1916. His news career started early, selling papers at age 7. He covered World War II for a wire service.
I'm just back from the biggest assignment that any American reporter could have so far in this war.
Then onto something new, television.
Hello, I'm Walter Cronkite.
As Walter grew in stature, television news grew in stature. Cronkite made CBS News respectable.
He began anchoring the evening news in 1962. 2 years later, perhaps the defining moment of his career.
The flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
After a trip to Vietnam, a rare statement of opinion.
To say that we are mired in stalemate seems the only realistic, if unsatisfactory, conclusion.
Outer space seemed to excite him most.
Man on the moon.
Boy. Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute. I think the biggest thing about him is he loved reporting and presenting the news. He had a passion for it. And I think the audience recognized that he really cared about it.
Today, that audience remembered.
I just felt safe watching Walter Cronkite.
When you think of American news and our news broadcasts, he's the first guy you always think of.
Cronkite retired reluctantly.
For almost 2 decades, after all, we've been meeting like this in the evenings, and I'll miss that.
And that's the way it is. And that's the way it is.
And that's the way it is.
There's obviously a tremendous reverence and respect for Walter Cronkite. All of this reminds me of my days at CBS News some 30 years ago for my first job in this business, just learning how to become a reporter, working in a newsroom near a separate area that was called the Cronkite Studio. I can remember always trying to catch a glimpse to see what he was doing in there, or just happen to try and run into him in the hallway. I remember always he was always very approachable and not that intimidating, just as he was on TV.
NBC's Ron Allen, thank you for that. And we turn now to the anchor and managing editor of Nightly News, Brian Williams, in Maine tonight with his memories of Walter Cronkite. Brian, I've heard you say over these last few hours that you grew up wanting to be Walter Cronkite, and you had the opportunity to know him personally. What are your memories?
Well, it was a great blessing in life, Savannah, and you're right. Thank you for having me, because he was the guy I wanted to be. Our black and white television set with rabbit ears was my window on the world. It's how I learned about the Cold War, Vietnam War, those assassinations, and 40 years ago, the moon mission. And Walter Cronkite was the way I learned about it. So as a young man, it was easy to have a role model. Look at this reaction to this man's death across the country. Absolutely a giant figure in our time. Before it was known as the mainstream media, by the way, it was just the evening news, and Walter Cronkite, along with Huntley Brinkley on NBC, commanded a huge share of it.
And as you mentioned, there were choices even back then. What was his appeal to most Americans?
Well, he was a simple man, as Tom pointed out, a son of the American Midwest, Missouri, sitting in a newsroom. And I made a pilgrimage as a young man. I wanted to see that place that I'd watched for so many years. I was disappointed to see it was a woodcut of the globe behind him on a wall, painted lime green, and just a white Formica desk. It kind of paled to its television comparison, but Walter never did. He was more impressive the more you were around him, and that was a huge attribute of his.
And we learned in Ron's piece that the word anchorman itself was coined for Walter Cronkite. What do you think the lasting impact he will have on this business?
Well, I hope that it's every night we come on the air and do our jobs well, and I hope that's every night. And because of the foundation he laid down, all those 20 years of great work, because of what he meant, the industry he helped to form, the evening newscasts, the 3 network evening newscasts, are the #1 source of news to this day and in this day and age in this country. That's a huge part of his legacy, Savannah.
NBC's Brian Williams in Maine with his memories tonight. Brian, thanks. Now to the fight over fixing America's health care system. It's getting critical. The president has been out pushing for reform every single day, a public effort growing more intense as the battle on Capitol Hill grows ever more difficult. NBC's Mike Vicara is at the White House for us tonight. Mike, good evening.
Good evening, Savannah. The health care news just keeps getting worse for the president. Last night we learned that the bill now moving through Congress would add to the deficit to the tune of $239 billion over 10 years. That's not good news to Mr. Obama as he tries to move a bill through Congress by August, and in Congress is where he's meeting resistance from his own ranks, putting the outcome in doubt.
The president left this morning for Camp David after making yet another pitch for his plan.
Think about what doing nothing in the face of ever-increasing costs will do to you and your family.
Health care reform, the signature issue of the Obama first term, now threatened in Congress. The president responding this week by keeping the heat on, trying to shore up support.
We are going to change health care reform.
The plan moving through Congress now would create a government-run option for insurance, require all Americans to be insured, and force most businesses to either offer a plan or pay a fee to the government.
No longer will you be without health insurance, even if you lose your job or change your jobs.
Total cost, $1 trillion, paid for in part with a surtax on Americans making more than $280,000 a year, $350,000 for couples. But now news that the plan isn't completely paid for. And in a blow to Democrats, this week the Congressional Budget Office said the bill now moving through the House would actually result in higher costs. Democrats say they'll make fixes.
We need to do more by way of reform. We need to do more by way of cost savings.
But Republicans aren't on board.
I do not see any Republican support at all at this time for the House bill.
The stakes couldn't be higher.
Having choices we don't like is no choice at all.
If they choose
We lose.
Harry and Louise, the fictional couple whose 1993 ad helped bring down the Clinton health care plan, a debacle that many believe cost Democrats control of Congress. Now those same actors are back, but on the other side.
A little more cooperation, a little less politics, and we can get the job done this time.
And Savannah, that latest ad of Harry Louise was paid for by the pharmaceutical lobby, and the president points to support from them, from doctors, nurses, from seniors, and groups such as that to say that's all the evidence you need to know that ultimately he is going to be successful. Savannah?
NBC's Mike Vicara at the White House. Mike, thanks. This was spacewalk day for 2 astronauts aboard the shuttle Endeavour. They're helping attach a platform for science experiments. It's the first of 5 planned spacewalks during this shuttle mission. Now to the investigation into those deadly suicide bomb attacks on 2 American hotels in Indonesia. Police there have reportedly confiscated handwritten notes, a cell phone, and a bomb from a guest room at the Jakarta Marriott, one of the hotels that was targeted. And investigators now say they're more sure than ever the mastermind was the fugitive leader of a Southeast Asian terror group. Now to the Middle East and a transformation that some have called a small wonder. In the town of Nablus on the West Bank, there's a new sense of security and economic prosperity and hope in a place where law and order has been restored for the first time in years. Our story from NBC's Martin Fletcher in Nablus.
What a transformation. Nablus was known as the West Bank's hotbed of terror. Today it's the Palestinian shopping capital. The change begins here at the entrance to town. This was Israel's roadblock controlling Palestinians coming and going. Today it's gone, along with 150 others in the West Bank, lifted in the last month. So Palestinians are free to travel again, thanks to pressure on Israel from America. And America trained and equipped the new Palestinian police. Today's challenge, controlling the crowds. Nablus is going for the Guinness Book of Records, the world's biggest kanafe, a Palestinian pastry.
The best thing is the smile that you can see in every individual's face.
But the best American training didn't prepare the police for this. Palestinians storming the barricades, not for freedom, but for free pastry.
Of course, it's quickly getting out of control, but the people have heard that the kanafe is really good, and it is.
222 feet long of pastry, weighing 3,891 pounds, devoured in 10 minutes. In the crowd, we found an old acquaintance, Abu Nasser, once a leader of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades in Nablus. He fought Israel for 15 years.
No, just a telephone. No gun. That's good. That's good.
Now he says, I live at home at last with my wife and children. We have stability. It's better. It isn't peace, but better times have come to Nablus, for the time being anyway. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Nablus on the West Bank.
And when Nightly News continues, a summertime safety alert, a hidden danger in many swimming pools that could be a trap for kids. Back now with a story that may alarm some parents and save many young lives in the process. It's about a danger that's lurking beneath the surface of many swimming pools. Senior investigative correspondent Lisa Myers has more.
For children, pool drains are a natural curiosity, but can be deadly. Drains can pack up to 800 pounds of suction force. A child's hair or body can be sucked in and trapped underwater. Watch what happened when we put this rubber toy on a drain. 3 adult men could not pull it off.
I've been doing injury prevention for close to 15 years, and these stories are about as tragic and horrific as I've ever heard.
6-year-old Abigail Taylor fell on the kiddie pool drain at her family's club. Its suction pulled out her intestines, and she later died.
Graham, where are you today?
7-year-old Graham Baker, granddaughter of former Secretary of State James Baker, was playing in a spa like this. Her mother, Nancy, says she became trapped by a drain suction and drowned.
And it pinned her. She couldn't get up.
That tragedy and 5 years of tireless lobbying by the Baker family gave birth to a new law. It mandated that all public pools, basically any pool outside a private home, replaced these flat drain covers with new safer covers by the end of 2008. So the suction on this one is less powerful.
That's right.
But an NBC News investigation found that 6 months after the new law took effect, these potentially dangerous drains are still being used in thousands of pools from coast to coast. We found them at family resorts like these in South Florida and at 3 different hotel chains in Southern California. In fact, of the 14 pools we checked in 4 states, half still had the flat, illegal drains. In the case of public pools or hotel pools which aren't compliant, should they be closed down?
Absolutely.
Health departments across the country gave us similar numbers. In Denver and Indianapolis, roughly 50% of pools still use the illegal drains. In some counties in Florida, it's 70%. And in Los Angeles County, a whopping 90%.
That is absolutely not acceptable.
We shared our findings with Inez Tannenbaum, the newly appointed chair of the Consumer Product Safety Commission, which is charged with enforcing the law. If the pools have not made the safety fix, are you prepared to shut them down?
We are.
So far, the CPSC has told states that non-compliant pools should not be open. But an official says the agency has not yet shut down any pools. Safety officials urge families to ask if the drains are compliant before taking a swim. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Washington.
And up next, an underwater invasion you've got to see to believe. Something very strange is going on along the coast of Southern California. Fishermen are reeling in an unusual catch, and some divers there are getting a real scare. NBC's Miguel Almaguer now on the sea creatures that have many people asking, what are they and why are they here?
Something big is lurking in the water.
I've never seen anything like this before.
You could call it an invasion.
Wow! There it goes!
Of Humboldt flying squid, jumbo squid, or Diablo Rojo, red devils. Aggressive and huge, 5-foot-long, 100-pound sea monsters. Thousands of them swarming California waters. Dive video shows the self-propelling, tentacle-grabbing, invertebrate-launching creatures lunging towards divers. Shanda McGill had what you could call a too-close encounter.
The Humboldt grabbed my high-pressure inflator hose, which was strapped here and Velcroed, yanked it backwards, and pulled me down.
McGill thought this dive was her last. She talked about her battle with squid this morning on Today.
I was just able to kick as hard as I could and get to the surface and, you know, escape him. It could have gone really, really badly.
Jumbo squid usually live in warmer water, so some say they're making their way to California because there's fewer of their natural predators here. Others say the ocean itself is getting warmer. And they're not just in the water.
Most of them are still alive.
They're hitting the beach.
Wow, I think it's huge.
In San Diego, they're washing ashore at an alarming rate.
I have never seen these squid in 42 years that I've lived here.
We may not know exactly why they're here.
Why are they here? Why are the squid here? I can't honestly tell you.
But nearly everyone wants them gone.
We tried to go out swimming. There was like 5 around us. It was really scary.
Miguel Almaguer, NBC News, along the coast in Southern California.
Up next, Walter Cronkite in his own words. We end tonight where we began, with the legacy of Walter Cronkite. We're hearing a lot about his legendary passion for news from those who knew him best. Back in 2001 at his home on Martha's Vineyard, NBC's Jamie Gangel talked to Cronkite himself about some of the biggest stories of his career. And here he is in his own words.
Direct from our newsroom in New York.
There's hardly a story that breaks that I don't want to be covering. I'd like to be out there in the street myself.
3 weeks after the offensive began, the firing still goes on.
I went out to Vietnam for the Tet Offensive because we had been told by the military and by the president that we were winning that war. Well, I did a straight reporting job for an hour-long feature except for the close.
To say that we are mired in stalemate seems the only realistic, if unsatisfactory, conclusion.
When you went to Vietnam, you rarely expressed your opinion, but you did
on Vietnam.
The report was credited with swaying President Lyndon Johnson.
We do know that when he saw this in the air, he said, if I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America. And apparently it had some influence.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
At that moment, I realized what I'd been covering emotionally. My God, this young man is dead. Our president's dead. And it gripped me for a minute. Took a second to recover. I'm not ashamed of it at all. I think it's perfectly natural.
Lift off. Looks like a good flight. Oh, go, baby.
That's my biggest disappointment in life, is that I haven't made it into space. When John Glenn was announced that he was going to go up the second time, and he was going to test the effects of age, the effect of space on age, I called him up. He's a good friend. And I called him up. I said, John, this isn't fair. I'm 2 years older than you are. If anybody's going to test age, I ought to be going. He said, maybe I'm better qualified. Pretty good answer.
When you look back at your life and your career, what do you hope people will remember about it?
That he tried as a journalist, that he had a vision of what journalism should be, and in his own practice he adhered to it.
Walter Cronkite in his own words. And that is Nightly News for this Saturday. I'm Savannah Guthrie reporting from New York. For Lester Holt, Brian Williams, and all of us here at NBC News, have a good evening.